But the second one is that somebody thought that playing with his mental health would be a way to discredit him, which is playing into one of the ugliest stigmas in our society. Now,
Welcome back to Total Disclosure, everyone. My name is Tom Thompson, and this is a Total News Update. On August 9th, an article titled UFO Whistleblower Kept Security Clearance After Psychiatric Detention was penned by Ken Klippenstein for The Intercept. The article's subtext states that the star witness of Congress's UFO hearings, David Grusch, retained his clearance despite alleged substance abuse issues Freedom of Information Act documents reveal. Before anything else, it's essential to address the deplorable and cowardly act of exploiting a service member's battle against post-traumatic stress. This exploitation was executed through the unauthorized disclosure of confidential medical records, a reprehensible tactic. Let's remember that despite undergoing psychiatric detention, David Grusch maintained his TS/SCI clearance. The release of Mr. Grusch's private struggle with PTSD without consent was an attempt by someone to further their own agenda by undermining the credibility of a devoted American patriot. This incident speaks volumes about the moral compass of those responsible for the leak. Ironically, this maneuver has not adversely affected Mr. Grusch. Rather, this ill-conceived effort to discredit him seems feeble and mostly ineffective. One might even wonder if Grusch's claims lack substance. What logical reason could justify such an action?
It's a horrible thing to happen. And for anyone to seek to use the suffering of veterans, people who are dealing with PTSD, is utterly reprehensible. It's contemptible and it should be exposed. There should be an investigation into how a sensitive file like this was so obviously leaked within the intelligence community to try and discredit a good human being.
Update. I am joined by my partner in crime and the creator of TDP, Ty Roberts, and our very special guest today, the creator of the Paradigm Research Group. You may know him from some shows such as Ancient Aliens or one of a million different documentaries you've watched on the subject of UFOs. Our friend of the show, Stephen Bassett. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me here tonight. Obviously, there's a lot going on. There's a lot that we could be talking about. Steve, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you being with us tonight. I don't think we've spoken since the hearings. So the first thing I want to get to tonight are your initial face value reactions of what happened on the 26th.
Certainly. First real hearing with witnesses under oath since 1968, 55 years. It was, I don't think, kind of part of the plan. The situation was kind of moving along at a certain pace, too slow for most people, but nevertheless important and appropriate. And then Grusch emerged out of the ether. He was known by the people inside. They knew what the issues were. The question is, would he go public? And he did, as a whistleblower, not just as a witness. They didn't stop him. They could have, but they didn't. That says something. And he brings his story out as a whistleblower, meaning I may be breaking the law. What the government's doing is illegal. I've tried to get the information inside to the right people. I've been harassed. I'm a whistleblower.
So, and just to interject,
yeah, go ahead.
To interject really quickly, sorry, Tom.
No, go ahead.
You've always been the one who's maintained that line between a witness and a whistleblower. So you are saying that David Grusch is a true whistleblower?
He's the only one out there right now, in my opinion. There are some people that are way out in the left field, right field. They occasionally turn up online, but in terms of the process underway, he's the only actual whistleblower because he says he claims illegal. and illegal government actions, and he has gone through chain of command and been harassed. Everyone else I know of are not whistleblowers. You do not want to be a whistleblower, and a lot of people are just throwing that out there casually, even the journalists. Why do you not want to be a whistleblower? Because when you're a whistleblower, somebody goes and finds your medical records and makes sure to get them public, and finds out that you had, issues after you came back from Iraq. Who didn't? Right? You know what the suicide rate is for Iraqi veterans? You don't want to know. It's a national scandal. It's a tragedy, and we should be spending a fortune to deal with it. Instead, it's the usual stuff. People trying to beg for money. Can we get a little over here? There's, these guys are out in the streets living in tents. He came back. He went through hell. He got his act together and has had a tremendous career. So as far as I'm concerned, that information is just confirmation. This is a quality human being. However, do you think he wants that out there? No. And so that's why you have to make that distinction. And so, again, all of this just makes me more proud of David Grusch.
I have to agree. It was disheartening to see this situation unfold the way it has. And in my opinion, and in the opinion of many people in our community in this field of study, it only bolsters his credibility. It only makes him look like he's even more valuable and a tremendous patriot, if anything.
Well, it's as sad as we will let it be. I think that a lot of people are going to step up and support him, and it actually could be a positive in that sense. People that might have not said anything are going to step up, and so if that happens, it will not be a big deal. But the fact that it happened gives you a sense of the fact that there are still people out there that are feasting on the downside of this, the negative side of this, feasting on the truth embargo, skeptics, nattering nabobs, I like to call them, back in the back, finding any little thing they can keep themselves on Twitter. They're becoming increasingly irrelevant and irritating, but they're still there. And so Grusch is going to have to deal with them because they're going to feast on this medical report. You can bet your bottom dollar.
Oh, they're already doing it. And it's not even anything that I'm going to be paying much attention to. I mean, he received treatment. He was able to go back to work essentially and carry out his duties to the best of his abilities. So there should be no issue. They really shouldn't even come up against him at this point.
Well, he got his clearance. Yeah, the government knew all this, and he still got his clearance. Case closed. Point. Okay,
that's it.
Case closed.
That's it.
Yeah. And this is coming from, Tom and I. I'll speak for myself. I've battled addiction. I've been put into facilities. Not truly with my willingness, but sometimes that's what has to happen. And you see, these facilities are designed to help. And then you get the help that you need. So if anything, it just shows me that David Grusch is a human being and a true patriot.
Yeah. He probably got elite care. I don't think that every grunt out there that comes back, but he was intel, high level, educated. He got elite care. Every one of the veterans should get the same level of care. And well, it's up to Congress. They can either do that or do the nonsense the other nonsense that they focus on. Though this hearing is not nonsense. This was righteous, but because David came forward, the House made a decision, rapid decision. We won in the game. The Senate's dominating this. We're not potted plants down here. They're a Democratic-controlled Senate. We're a Republican-controlled House. We're going to have a hearing. We're going to get some witnesses. David Grusch clearly is a target, and I'm not surprised he agreed. And so they put together a quick hearing. They got 3 very good witnesses. 2 from 5 years ago, really, and then David recently. They conducted themselves well. It got massive press. It has made news, and it was deliberately designed to happen just before recess. So there won't be a follow-up hearing until for another 5 weeks. They'll get all the news, and the politicians will have time to react to this and think about it, which is good, because again, embedded in all this and what is coming in all this is some really difficult questions for a lot of people that are going to have problems answering. But going through all of this is going to make it easier for them to answer those questions and hopefully get less grief. It's a public relations thing, basically. And this is going to end up being okay. It sets the stage for a Senate hearing that could be watched by hundreds of millions of people. They don't know how many people have watched this hearing, but it was in multiple platforms. It went out on multiple feeds. I don't know about international. And of course, it's been sitting up and streaming. And so I'm sure the number of people that have seen it is now well into the millions. It might be tens of millions.
Yeah,
no, it is. Yeah.
We streamed it, there were so many outlets that streamed it, but I hate to play devil's advocate here, Steve, but you spoke about this recess. Now we essentially ended on a cliffhanger. Do you think that this could be a negative thing, in which case where the private aerospace companies have the ability to now essentially move or play a shell game with us going forward, now that they have a 5-week advance?
This issue is way past that. The truth embargo is collapsing around our feet just up the street. And any attempt for that kind of last minute stuff would be catastrophic. I assure you that's not going to happen. The advantage of how this went down is that, one, this is an opening act now for the Senate hearing, which is, if I imagine the major cable and network news operations are going to open up the feed to their foreign partners. So it should go out all over the world, live, plus of course streaming forever. So the number of people that would likely see within a reasonable amount of time the Senate hearings, because they'll go on for days, it will be in the hundreds of millions, might even be 1 billion people. 1.5 billion people watch the World Cup soccer final live. So that's a nice setup, but it also gives the politicians 5 weeks to decide how they're going to handle it. It's a little tough on the president and the White House, because they don't want to answer any questions on this. I assure you, this is the whole issue got ahead of the plan, general plan. There's no super tight script, but there is kind of a script. Got ahead of it. They're going to have to deal with that. There's already been some issues raised, but again, the town is dead, and people are going to read, and the American people have time to go to my paradigmresearchgroup.org and go to the resources and then down to Print Media Archive, where they will find 1,163 stories just for this year, triage from professional journalism, no fluff, no fringe stuff, good journalism. 1,163, most ever, and they can read all kinds of coverage about it and learn a great deal, and they could see the progress through the year. That is a service that I do for the World Print Media Archive on Paradigm Research Group. The year is going to hit 2,000 articles. I can barely load them fast enough, but they are linked, and you can word search the page, meaning you could go David Grusch, and you'll just ching, ching, ching down to every article that has David Grusch in the title.
That's fantastic.
So again, the public has time to go look at all that. Please do so. And while you're there, follow me on Twitter at Steve Bassett. Thank you very much. And that's good. So it doesn't slow down things too much, and they were going to go to recess regardless. If Mark Warner, he's a good man, wanted to really make an impression, he would call a special hearing during the recess and ask the demand that the committee come back. Unlikely. If he did it, there would be a very good reason for it, meaning there was something very compelling going on in the background that he felt he needed to do that. Not likely. And on that point, let me say something, make something very clear. You saw 2 hours of hearing on the 16th. Not the 16th. What day was that? 26th.
26th. Yeah.
What's going on behind the scenes is 10, 20 times more than that. The UAP issue now is organic. It's alive. It is alive on Capitol Hill, and it is being interacted with and cross-pollinated, and there's talk, and there's this, and there's briefings, and there's interviews, and reports coming in, and people are talking strategy, and you got the House and the Senate deciding who's going to do what. It is fully organic, like any major issue would normally be. It has never been there before, not even in the 40s and 50s.
Not to mention bipartisan.
Yes?
Not to mention bipartisan. I mean,
there's that. Yeah, bipartisan.
One of the only topics that ever been so, driven by both sides.
AOC and Burchett literally working together in tandem. It was actually kind of refreshing.
And they know it. These people in real life, sitting around the table with family at Thanksgiving, they are not like the people you see on the campaign trail. There might be a couple of exceptions. This is a show they put on because you got to raise untold millions of dollars, and you've got to get a defined voting group, or you can't win. And we have a system that is broken and needs to be completely reformed, but under the current system. And so you put on this show, and some of these shows are worse than others. That's not really who most of them are. This issue is allowing them to be just intelligent, thoughtful, nonpartisan people serving the American people, and they need to have the people do that. They desperately need the people to see them doing that in order to improve the overall relations and the image of the Congress. And so this issue has many benefits. That is just one of them. But the point I'm making is that behind the scenes, this thing is alive. And when that happens, it is going to go somewhere. It is going to get resolved. And in this case, it's not about legislation. There's plenty of legislation, and there'll be more. The resolution of this issue has only one final move in the chess game, and that is the president must confirm the non-human intelligence, extraterrestrial. I'm sorry, that's what it is, but you want to call it non-human intelligence? Fine. Just make sure that it's advanced non-human intelligence, because orcas are very intelligent and they're not human.
That's right.
Okay, so it's alive and happening, and I still feel very optimistic we have disclosure this year.
Really?
Yeah,
so before the end of the year, you believe that do you believe that we'll have that presidential moment, or do you believe that they'll go about it differently than that?
Well, from the standpoint of the activist movement that I'm a part of, there's only one disclosure, and that's the president.
Yeah,
Anything
that's
else
the
is not
president.
disclosure.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of like
Nothing
the big D that you'd look for in that situation.
Yes.
So what's the next
Disclosure,
step then? Is probably my best question to ask you at this point. We are where we're at. Recess is happening. We're going to come back after that recess. They put this hit piece out about Grusch. I know there's other whistleblowers that are waiting in the wings. There's new evidence that's coming out every day. There was just footage I saw today, I shared on Twitter, of UFO activity over Utah that was credible enough to grab my attention, because I skim through footage a lot.
Yeah,
and I see what, but this was good. This was a really interesting piece of footage. So when they come back from recess, what is going to happen next?
First of all, at this point, there are no other whistleblowers that I'm aware of that are going to come forward. So hope, but if there are, this is not helping. It's possible that a couple of people that were planning on taking that approach will not go there. They may not show up at all. But you're only a whistleblower if you say you are. Now, if you believe that the government has acted in an illegal way, that's fine. That doesn't mean you have to charge it with that. You could just, in your head, no, that's not illegal, but I'm ready to testify. I want to talk. I want to tell you what I know. Yeah. So you really, unless you're being really harassed to the point where you need to declare whistleblower status in order to get under the Whistleblower Act. There is a Whistleblower Act in addition to the language that is turned up in some of the UAP legislation. So if you're not getting harassed that much, you don't want to go there. This is last resort. So do I expect any more whistleblowers in September? I'm going to go probably no. And what's happening to Grusch certainly is going to help people make that decision. But we have more than enough non-whistleblower witnesses, I assure you, to end the truth embargo, assuming they're put in front of the Senate Intel Committee under oath, and there's absolutely no reason to believe they will not be.
That's a good point. So we could be in a situation where there are other witnesses that come forward, not whistleblowers. So there's a distinction there. We could have firsthand witnesses, because all of the people that I've been talking to have been telling me that whoever comes next, whether it be 1, 2, 3, 5 people, we're going to get a little bit closer.
Smithy,
right, whoever
Q.
it is, it's going to be an individual or a group of individuals that is closer to the craft, so to speak, than Grusch was.
Not necessarily. Again, this whole firsthand, secondhand, this isn't a murder trial. This is getting information to our Congress to make decisions about legislation and or talk to the White House. All right. And so when a highly regarded security clearance intel guy tells you I was talked to by UAP people that are directly involved in the program, that's just not secondhand testimony at somebody's shoplifting trial. Right. And so when the nuclear tampering witnesses like Bob Salas go up there, okay, even Bob is a secondhand witness to the craft being over the base because he was down in the silo. Now, if they get some security guys who are younger than Bob to come, they would be firsthand witnesses to that. But if somebody goes on the usual Twitter nonsense, and I don't want to knock Twitter, I love Twitter. If somebody wants to play the game, well, Bob Salas didn't actually see the craft, and so that was secondhand. Well, he was firsthand to the missiles being shut down. I don't even want to go there. There's a lot of people who want to play that game. I'm not playing that game. This is major. It is not a trial. It is a revealing process using people under oath with careers who have taken polygraph tests. They have security clearances. And so all that nonsense that it might be brought up, I invite people to just go right by it. Don't give them your time. Just go right by them and focus on the testimony and the actions on the Hill that is going to lead to confirmation by the president.
Yeah, and I'd love to get your thoughts on a couple things regarding testimony that was revealed not only in the hearings but in the News Nation special with Ross Coulthart. I mean, Grusch is not just claiming that we have UFOs, but that there is potentially bodies and a treaty that was signed. Not only that, and then Vatican involvement. Were any of those? I don't think they would be a surprise to you, but do you think getting those so soon was a little bit overwhelming for people?
Yeah, he's jumped the gun, cut in line. I mean, he cut in line in a way. It's actually not a good way to put it. He had to come forward. He's being threatened. The House cut in line, and now we're out ahead of our skis. Now, just because you're ahead of your skis doesn't mean you're going to fall down the mountain. You can be ahead of your skis and just keep skiing, right? Make it all the way down. But yeah, so he's brought up the treaty issue. This is a hugely controversial issue that will be a very tough post-disclosure matter to discuss. Public relations issues there are huge, and the what was the other thing? What was the treaty? And what was this other thing that he mentioned?
People have been murdered.
People have been murdered. We have
that was a big point of emphasis in the congressional hearing.
Yeah, we have bodies and the Vatican.
Well, he brought up the bodies at the hearing, but he brought them up in the pre-interview. But he also came up in the hearing. I don't think the Vatican came up.
It didn't come up in the hearings. No.
Everything he's talking about has been looked at, investigated, and written about by people in this field that have been carrying the water since 1947. All right. So nothing is actually new. He hasn't said anything that I don't have colleagues that have addressed it and brought it out and provided what evidence they could for it. And that's not surprising, because what is happening now is not the government is trying to find out what's going on and people are going to come forward and tell us. That's not what's going on at all. The government knows what this phenomenon is, has bodies, has tech, has been re-engineering and studying the tech forever, has a vast amount of information. They've also dealt with contactees, got information. So what is going on is not about finding out what's happening with this issue. It is about ending the truth embargo itself. How do you end a policy where you've lied to the American people for 77 years and then stop lying, right? And tell them, no, here's what's going on. And then deal with all the questions that'll follow. Well, you can't avoid the hard questions. They're going to come. But by going through this process, almost in a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's almost like a ritual or a matter of protocol. By going through this process, which they could have done 10, 20, 40, 50, even 70 years ago, they're showing a kind of faith to the American people. Here's what we didn't do, but we're doing it now. We're showing you how we would have gone about it. Mm-hmm. And people, and a lot of the new people and young kids, as far as they're concerned, doesn't matter. As far as they're concerned, they're getting the goods. That's all that matters. They don't care about Blue Book. They don't care about the truth embargo. and only the older people are going to go there. But the fact is that shortly after the president confirms, a number of people and spokespeople in the government are going to ask the question, when did you really find out about the ETs? And the answer is going to be 1940s. And then the follow-up question is, well, why didn't you tell us sooner? National security.
National security. Yep.
It's always that.
National security. But being banned. And because they went through the process and the protocol and did the things they should have done and supposed to do, a lot of people say, okay, we get it. Okay. You've shown faith. We understand national security. I like to have known it sooner. A lot of my colleagues did not live to see this because they dragged it out for 76 years. But
Right.
Again, public relations wise, it will be redeeming to a large degree, and it will make it easier for the public and the Congress, military intelligence complex to interact, negotiate, and deal in the post-disclosure world, and move forward and not get drowned in recriminations and demands for reclamation and all that kind of stuff. So that is what's going on. It's basically it's almost like a play, sort of. It's like a play that has a script and acts, and you got to do
Really
the whole
is.
play, and you get to the final end, and people come out on the stage and they bow and they get a standing ovation, and then you interview the actors. I mean, it's really, that's what's going on. And if I can get on any of the major networks, so far they have not given me that.
Blows
that
my
opportunity.
mind.
Yeah,
That's
I
what
don't
I'm
get
going to
that.
say.
It blows
I
my
think
mind.
News Nation,
Yet,
we can get Steve on News Nation. I think we
Yeah.
can do that.
I
I think we
could
can
get
make
you,
that happen.
I think we could get you on News Nation, Steve.
And
But
credit to them for covering this story as well as they have
Oh yeah,
too. That's
they're
you know what I
way
mean.
out in front.
Way
They've
out
done
in front.
something like 80 articles this year. I think the Post has done 10.
Colt Hart,
yeah,
And the
News
Post is
Nation
the
have been
political
great.
paper. So no,
And
they're
you
way
know-
out in front doing a great job. News Nation,
and-
right on.
the-
But
you know what
no,
really
I
aggravates
want the
me?
people. I want the people to know this for a reason. I'm not trying to throw cold water on the government's effort. I'm not trying to embarrass the United States government. I want the end of the truth embargo to be authentic. Now, what do I mean by that? In other words, they're having to misrepresent, dodge, weave, exclude a lot of stuff in order to advance this process that leads to disclosure. And from one perspective, that's inauthentic. It's more lies. It's more misrepresentation in order to get out from under the lie. Okay. But if people know that, if they know why they're doing that, then it takes a lot of the poison out of it. So that the end game, though it is not a actual representation of what's going on, it is a stage, kind of a staged event for a purpose. It's more authentic because people know it. In other words, you hold two thoughts in your head. The government's known all about this since the 40s. They're acting like they kind of just found out, but they're doing that for a reason, because we need to get the disclosure and the confirmation so that we can then open up the issue to the journalists, to the academics, to the people, and start declassifying and revealing. Until we get that confirmation, we can't do that.
And with the Chuck Schumer bill, that legislation is that you can tell that is informed legislation.
No question.
And
Look at the name
I
of it.
think, yeah, I mean it's right there in the name, right? So with all these developments, it's hard for me to wonder, and I'm sure Tom could say this as well, but do you think that the countries of the world are looking to the U.S.? I know Russia, it's got its thing in Ukraine, but do you think these major superpowers are looking to the U.S. and saying, "Hey, look what's happening over there. Is there anything we should know?"
No, they already know. All the major nations know about the ET presence.
Well,
and
their people.
Their people are not told, but the nations know. All the nations that have air forces with jets and stuff, they all know. But they're deferring to us. They have always deferred to us
For everything, nearly.
and they're certainly not going to pull the rug out from under us now. But let me tell you, we need to get this done, because this is a big hanging matzo ball, right? And we need to deal with it, because it could get awkward. Case in point, a very well known, I think, director, author, writer named Christopher Lee, in the UK, just an article about the fact that he is pressuring Sunak, the prime minister, to go to Prince Charles, who we know has a lot of interest in the subject, and recruit Prince Charles to start pressuring the Parliament to start releasing stuff. Now, you see, that's not disclosure, but it is a message to Schumer and our government. Hey, guys, don't drag your feet on this. Sunak, if he wanted to, could go to MI6, MI5, get some key information and evidence, come out and be the disclosure head of state. And right. He would really make a lot of American people angry, but he could do that if he wanted to. He's not going to. But the other nations know, and they are deferring to us. And that's fine.
We
just
honor that. It's movement, though. It's movement in our government. Then the Brazilians held a hearing, and now you're hearing this. I mean, name another time in history where that's ever happened. Then the Canadians, too. So, I mean, the writing's on the wall here.
They're dabbling. But again, the U.S. is doing the heavy lifting. Now, let's talk about Schumer for a second. Again, in the context of what I was trying to say, two things in your head at the same time, okay? So Schumer steps into this deal as the majority leader, which is a big deal. He's deliberately not done that, but he decided it's time for me to make a move. So he puts this extraordinary legislative language up on the site as being submitted for reconciliation to be signed by the president. It's not a bill yet. And in it, he's saying, look, if you've got here's the deal. If you've got any non-human tech or bodies, they're ours. They belong to us. All right. And we may want them. But in the meantime, we want a full accounting of it in 300 days. Now, people that are not as knowledgeable about the issue may conclude that Chuck Schumer just recently learned that we have non-human technology. And boy, I think we should claim that by eminent domain. No. Chuck Schumer's known we've had for God knows how long. He isn't just finding it out. And so what's going on? By doing this, by putting that legislation in within the context of what I was discussing, he has sent a word to the full Intel committee publicly. I mean, he could be saying things to them privately, anything he wants, but publicly, he has put them on notice. I'm good with this. I'm okay. Do your thing. Keep going. I'm the majority leader, and I'm down with this. He puts the military intelligence complex on notice. Hey, at some point, folks, we're coming for the tech. Okay? So kind of get ready. So you see two things in your head at the same time. Everything that is done, I view in that perspective, and I'm not being disappointed. It is playing out pretty much as I thought it would. And these maneuvers may seem, why go to all this trouble? Why not just get it out? Because this is not some trivial matter that you need to point out. This isn't like the Tuskegee experiment where they have to finally acknowledge, well, look, we did this bad thing. We're sorry. No. This is a full misrepresentation of reality to the entire world for 7.5 decades about something that's the most profound issue in the world with all kinds of implications for every living person. And so, no, you just can't come out and say, yeah, we lied about it, but here's it. Let's move on. No. They got to go through this kind of ritual process. And you're seeing more and more people involved. You've got all the senators in the Senate Intel Committee have signed a letter that was submitted to Rubio by the chair. You've got a number of people, and obviously in the House, that got involved early. Now you've got a hearing in the House. You've got the military intelligence complex involved in a lot of ways. They're showing the faith. But it's awkward. And it's not like an actual play with a tight script and a director and everybody follows. No, they can't do that. They can't come together and kind of work this out in advance. They're following a script that is generally, I think, a consensus thing, but it's very prone to messiness. Perfect example. When Grusch comes out prematurely and puts bodies and machines in play, and then creates a situation for the House to make its move because it's basically a political maneuver to cut in line. Okay, no problem. And puts him under oath on television and to seen by millions of people. This is not helpful for Arrow and Kirkpatrick.
Patrick was not just going to say that.
Yeah, to go find out what's going on. He's basically put in charge of Arrow as the mayor of a Potemkin village. In other words, we have it, we set it up, we have a chair, there's some rules, there's some regs, but Arrow is not going to be going out and finding it out. We already know what it is. That's why they haven't been shoving money at it. Now, to be clear, if Kirkpatrick is worried about his future, once we get disclosure, Arrow becomes very funded. Arrow will be the entity set up and answering to the Department of Defense and the Director of National Intelligence, DNI, about our goings on with respect to the phenomena and any other thing related to it that has the government involved in national security. Arrow will be very busy and well funded after disclosure. But instead, this happens. And Kirkpatrick, I think, panicked. And so, because it makes him look stupid, because they're going to come to him now and say, well, you're the head of Arrow. What do you know about the bodies? He can't talk about bodies. And so he's been put at a very tough spot. And he made the decision to take an aggressive action, meaning I will neutralize it by going directly after Grusch in an open letter. This was a very big mistake.
Very big.
He is removed from Arrow in the next 30 days.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me.
I'm not asking for that. I'm simply saying that could be an outcome.
He's between a rock and a hard place at this point. I'm trying not to put too much blame on him, but I don't think he played the right cards in this situation.
It's not his fault.
Yeah, he acted.
It's all the reason to get it done. If the longer we drag this out, the more messy things are going to happen.
Yeah, all this ad-libbing in the midst of a play isn't going to work. People have to know their script.
And you can't do that. You can't bring everybody together and have a director and go over it and rehearse. That's not possible.
Yeah, it's not that kind of play.
Well, speaking of directors, in the recent hearings, I know, we know Marco Rubio and Senator Kirsten Gillibrand have been champions of this topic,
and Mark Warner, and Mark
Warner as well. Yep, very much so.
But for the former, where are they? Why aren't they speaking about these hearings? Why aren't they speaking about Grusch? Where have they been in this mix? All of a sudden, they just disappeared.
Well, first of all, the House was doing its thing, and there is a lot of competition between the House and the Senate, particularly when one is in one party and one's in another. Yeah. So for them to kind of step in front of the camera and say, "Don't forget about us," that's not good protocol. So they step back. They've had plenty of press and plenty of attention. So they step back, let the House get some attention. And then they go to recess. And so, stay silent on it. Let the people absorb what just happened. Let them have some time to go to my print media archive and read 500, 600, 800 articles. Feel free. It's free. All right. But sign up on my email list and follow me on Twitter at Steve Bassett. That's okay. So don't think that the Senate is decided to take a year off or anything. I assure you, they should be the next move. I will be stunned if by the time they actually are back in session again in September, say 4 or 5 days, if Warner has not at that point, either during recess or right after returning, set the date for the Senate hearings. I will be stunned, and I'm going to go on podcasts and I'm going to go in front of cameras and probably get overworked up.
Well, we'd again, this is a shorter show, but we'd love that to be one of those podcasts where you get up uppity and get involved, because I think your voice is, again, a lot of your colleagues didn't make it to see these days, and again, I love what you do on your site, where you have a remembrance of those people that paved the path. Pave the path that we're on now.
Sure, my interests are in the people that did the work originally. I'm eager to learn more about these new people and all of that. But I view my work as first serving the field, the people that have carried all the water for all these years, serving the disclosure process to get the confirmation, and then trying to act as a interface diplomat in the post-disclosure world. PRG will be a think tank by then. I've got some colleagues that are setting up think tanks. They're going to be think tanks hanging from trees. Some of them are going to be big, though, big think tanks. So that's how I view it. I'm not a journalist. I'm a researcher. I'm sorry. I'm not a researcher. I'm a journalist. Freudian slip. Doesn't mean a thing. I go places and say things that journalists or researchers don't say. And that bothers some people. Why does he say that? Why did he say that? And I'm going, hey, I'm an activist. Right? We have different rules. We have different goals. right?
Yes.
My job is not to go on a show and say just the right thing so I get invited back on the show. My job is to go on a show and get a point across. And if that means creating some good trouble, I'll create some good trouble. But
I love that.
Nothing severe. It's just that activists have their role, journalists have their role, researchers have theirs. And the activists usually are the ones that irritate people the most.
Yeah. Well, then there's Jeremy Corbell. So I mean,
let's don't get into personalities here.
He's the Steve. Your passion obviously is worn on your sleeve. I mean, we can see it. It's
well, if you're not passionate,
as this is unfolding,
you have a problem.
That's the thing. It's like you can't be an activist without passion. I want to ask you just from one person to another, with just everything encompassed at this point. How do you feel? Are you excited? Are you optimistic? Like we're like when you're just by yourself and you're just in your own thoughts, like you're laying in bed, like what are you thinking right now about all of this? Honestly,
no, it's no question. I'm more convinced and more excited than ever, feeling a certain amount of not only vindication but just relief that it's happening in my time. I lived to see it, but it's been incredibly stressful. I've been stressed to the max because I'm trying to do stuff on the West Coast and the East Coast, media project in the works, all kinds of problems with that. There's a strike going on, wars in Ukraine, everybody's getting indicted,
everybody.
I'm always operating from a thin pool of money.
Well, I need a listen.
Is there a patron out there? 500 to 600K? You would be amazed at what I could do with that. But without that, then I'm still operating as like, head on to the Goodwill store, get some stuff, come on back, buy and get online and do
those
something.
Thrift stores, you can find some gems in there.
but because things are breaking, you can imagine that the demand is increased. It's more complicated. There's so much happening at once. So let me put it this way. I'm trying to be cool about it. I'm trying not to get too worked up. I'm having some bad days and it's messy, but anytime I start to get a little irritated, I just remind myself, again, I'm not in a trench in Ukraine fighting the Russian army. And so shut up, Steve, and get back to work.
Yeah, and absolutely. I couldn't. If you ever need anything, any help with any projects, I'm going to cut this part out, 50 minutes. But, this is between us. If you ever need anything, editing, music, a camera to be sent to you, just say the word.
When I convert Pioneering Research Group to a nonprofit, which it has never been, it's always been a sole proprietorship. Good idea, bad idea, I had my reasons. But now is the time. I'm going to be going out to, Patreon and raising tax deductible money for the first time. And I think it will bring in operational money. And obviously I'm going to be looking for a major donor as well. But I have a huge list of people that want to volunteer for PRG. But PRG is not set up for that. It's never been set up for that. It's basically a one-man band. Okay.
Right.
Once PRG is a nonprofit and set up with some cash flow, I am going to put out the call to this list and ask people for their ideas of how they think they can volunteer and see if I can set up what amounts to a volunteer corps. And then from that, if PRG continues to raise funding, if the funding level goes up, I can pull individuals out of that volunteer corps and make them paid, say consultants or something like that. I mean, that's the plan. It's doable. However, no need to wait for the nonprofit. If there's a patron out there, that just sold their yacht because they just got tired of filling the damn thing as gas tank, and I want to drop a few $100,000 on Steve. I could use it.
Yeah, where's the Robert Bigelows of the world right now?
Right. So, somebody make a call.
And what happens if somebody can do that? You slam dunk the 501(c)(3). I mean, you ram that baby through and you get it so that they can, in fact, of course, get a tax deduction. That's the way it often goes.
Oh, absolutely.
Capitalism at its finest.
And Steve, my final, at least my final question, before we wrap up the segment is, you've been on record saying weeks, not months. You've alluded to it in this interview already, but do you think for the first time that this UAP topic, the truth embargo, will be a part of the presidential campaigns?
We don't want that. Oh. What we want, and the timing is right for it, is we do not want to go into this campaign without confirmation, with these giant matzo balls hanging in the air, and nobody really has concrete information, and the candidates are in their usual mode, hyper partisanship. What about the ET? And what about the ETs? Wow, what about Hunter Biden? What about the ETs? Well, what about Donald Trump? Whatever, right? We don't want that.
Well, could one of these candidates use that as a leveraging? So say Biden wants to get reelected, and he says, well, what's the best way I can get elected? Well, sir, we have this one plan that we could, bring you in on, and that could work. Or the opposite, the other candidate could be briefed and
so the Hillary Clinton Plan B situation.
I get it. Perfectly reasonable suggestion, except that, okay, we haven't had confirmation, but one or more of the candidates want to leverage this, try to get some votes. So they do. So the press comes up and says, well, what do you think about the bodies? Well, I've never seen one. Well, what do you know about? Well, I heard it secondhand. Do you have clearance? Well, no, I really don't. But I think they're what?
Yeah, it doesn't go anywhere.
They can't really answer the questions. And if they really have information, they can't do it. And so the whole thing will be a fiasco. On the other hand,
it would be.
If we get disclosure in September, then the entire candidacy group, which is going to be several thousand candidates for the 435 House and 33 seats plus 50, a bunch of governorships. I mean, this is a huge candidate pile. They'll all have months to read Richard Dolan and all the other good books and watch Ross Coulthard's interviews and get up to speed on the issue. And there's huge amounts. I mean, there's a couple of PhDs of material out there. Easy. Yeah. So, but you learn what you can. And then when you go out in the campaign, you're not restricted. It's totally cool to talk about it, totally cool to answer questions about it. And what happens is the issue gets vetted as a part of this $4 billion thing that we hold every 4 years, the presidential election, maybe $6 billion this year. Do we get $6 billion worth of results? I don't think so. So in any event, so it's all part of it. So the candidates are learning. The candidates are giving their positions on it, so you know what you're electing. If the candidate takes a position, this is all nonsense. There are no ETs here. This is all some sort of psyop. Well, fine. So now the population can say, well, we've seen all this, and this person says there's a psyop. I'm not electing that guy or her. Again, that's what you want. But if they don't get confirmation, that is not what will happen. And so the message to Mark Warner will continue to be, Mark, you are the guy, right? You're the guy. The way it's worked out, the Senate Intel Committee is the committee to end this. You are the chairman of that committee. You've gotten the backing recently of the majority leader. Get it done, my friend. And they may build one of those statues, in the Capitol. What do they call it? That big Capitol dome area. I forget the name of it, but
I know what you're talking about.
There's presidential medals of freedom hanging around here, folks. Go get them.
Go get them, baby. Go get them. And those are great words. Great words to end by.
I totally agree with that. Steve, thank you so much for your time. We're all very excited with what's going on. And before we go, I just want to say, at least for myself personally, I'm standing with Mr. Grusch, all the whistleblowers, all the witnesses.
Of course.
We want this thing to get pushed through. As Ty mentioned before, even myself included, we've had some personal battles with similar things. So to see that getting played as a card against him or trying to be weaponized, it only lights a fire under our asses to push even harder for this to reach the surface and finally be confirmed in the way that you and many others want to see it happen when the president comes to the podium and lays the damn thing out.
And on Twitter, after you've subscribed to @Steve Bassett, when this nonsense turns up, particularly attacks on Grusch, push back, but don't be personal. Don't attack the poster. Basically say, look, this is not appropriate, or this doesn't really matter, or this is not the full picture, it's unreasonable, whatever. Don't personalize the pushback, but push back.
Right.
Stand with Grusch. Right, becoming a battle amongst posting amongst Twitter, tweeters. That doesn't help anything, right?
No,
and you'll get better audience. People will be paying more attention to your postings if you don't personalize them.
Exactly. I try to stay away from things like that. Well, Steve, your time is valuable, and we are incredibly grateful for you being here. Obviously, if you're a viewer of the show, make sure you check out our podcast, Total Disclosure, over on Spotify. We're on YouTube. They're separate. And obviously, we have a membership. It's cheaper than a pack of cigarettes, and it's healthier for you. So if you want to sign up and you're interested, let us know. We're super happy to have you. Steve, thank you again so much for being here. Ty's dying. That's genuine. I love genuine moments. I love genuine moments. My name is Tom Thompson for Ty Roberts and Mr. Steve Bassett. This is Total Disclosure Live, and this has been a Total News Update.